Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Let me introduce, this is Tony Brown, our
Hi,
pastor,
Tony.
Ken
Nice to
Hay.
meet you.
Nice to
This
meet
is
you.
Jill Bueller.
Jill, nice to meet you.
You know these
Yeah,
two
we
guys.
met before. Good to see you again.
We talked.
Have a seat.
How are you all this evening?
Good.
A few business cards since I forgot last time. That's enough there.
I briefed everybody on our process, Ken,
Okay.
that we interviewed 6 altogether, and copies of your proposal
Okay.
and circulated to everybody. So, I'll let you begin with whatever statement you want to make.
Well, I think you should hire me.
Gee, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, I guess, you know, this is the kind of project I like to do. I have a lot of experience with remodels and additions, both in residential and in commercial and institutional, so I think I'm a good candidate in terms of experience. I've done a fair amount of religious facility projects for not being a specialist in that. And I've received quite a bit of praise and kudos for the projects I've worked on, especially from the United Methodist organization. And you know, I think I'm well prepared. I've researched the project thoroughly. It's a pretty straightforward project for all intents and purposes. You have a few regulatory hurdles to get over, but I think you've got the support of the city. And as long as you process it thoughtfully and get through the process the way it's intended, I think you'll be fine. So.
As long as we don't go in reading one email, as long as we don't go into the city again with nothing more than what we have right now.
Yeah.
The one email was something about, the comment was that we'd been in there twice, that's the way I interpreted it. And with the planner.
Oh, with John?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've told those church people twice something about it.
Well, you know, it's, I
And
think
he's right, I mean, we need to.
what he's really saying is until you submit a formal
Right.
pre-application,
Yeah.
nothing's guaranteed is
That's
the
right.
thing. You know, that might have been a defensive reaction to my calling him and saying, well, I was told by the church, you know, the folks of the church that, so they immediately sort of back up, and, which I did intentionally to see where he would back up to. And
The first go-around with John was about 3 years ago, and
Yeah.
it was a totally different approach.
oh, okay.
The more recent one was just, 3-4 months ago. The 3 of us sat down with him and Mike Hoskins.
He was quite supportive. He was eager to engage me and talk about the project. He even offered to come down and meet me. I never did. I was going to come down and meet with. Was it Dave, the building? Dave, I know.
Michael Hoskins.
Michael Hoskin, the actual building official. John's the planner.
Right.
And I did talk to Michael a little bit, and he had actually offered to come and meet me, and I wasn't able to do that before our schedules became too conflicted, but he was very supportive too. You know, his official position, you know, is sort of the same, but I think they're eager to help you realize a project, so.
Tony and Jill, any questions for Ken?
I don't have any. This is not my specialty. That's why I have this good group of people here.
You'll get to be expert real soon.
I was impressed that you went and talked to John and that, you know, how much you've already done as far as investigating and research into our project.
Well,
thought
I
that
want the
was-
project. A good way to get there is to be well informed and to try to educate yourself.
And who, overall responsibility for the end result, how much of that do you take?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean in terms of the permit processing and the architectural design and all those sorts of things. Well, as a licensed architect, anything I touch, I'm legally responsible for. On this particular project, I think the desire and the request has been to minimize services as much as possible because, you know, cost is a factor of the hours spent. So there would be, you know, full responsibility for the things that I'm directly involved in, which is preparing the final design, and the permit, application and the structural design. But my proposal doesn't include any finished detailing. I mean, the
On the
presumption is,
side.
yeah, this presumption is, I mean, my drawings will include notes on the exterior finishes about, ensuring that it matches and is compatible. In fact, it'll include anything you actually give me, but the proposal doesn't include any detailed specifications of products and systems and materials and things like that. So,
Joe's been involved with some big hospital projects, and
right.
some architects that I've worked with, you get a spec book this thick on
Right.
finishes. And I'm not anticipating that we're gonna need
No,
that for
no.
me.
I mean, my basic drawing set has an extensive, in fact, even on, I try to actually put as much information in the drawings as I can on my high-end custom homes or small commercial projects. Even the specifications are part of the drawings. I mean, I have a couple of pages. Actually, it can be a page to 3 pages, depending on how complicated. And then that, when I'm contracted to provide that full scope of service, I try to cover or point to everything that I can. That's what's most important. This isn't, partly because of the way you're gonna go about building the project, I don't think you necessarily need that deep level of service. And I don't think you're gonna need that deep level of specification. I mean, Dave and I think all three of us talked a little bit about the value of negotiating a contract with a reliable and responsible contractor, which I think is your best defense against, against trouble. That said, you always want to have some frame of reference for how to manage, disputes and things like that, because they do arise. I mean, the truth is, construction's a little bit of a confrontational process, just by nature, because it's challenging, there's time constraints. The contractor is desperately trying to make a profit, which is oftentimes time-driven. And so, it's nice to make sure you have some framework and for working things out, but yeah, as far as responsibility, it would be, full responsibility for the scope of works that I'm finally contracted to do. And again, just to summarize, that would include, the basic permit drawings, which would include structural and all the life and health safety, related issues, exiting analysis and things like that, that would be especially important for this area here.
Some of the, since we've seen you, Ken, we've started very, very preliminary discussions. A member of our church is a heating contractor, and you probably noticed we're putting a new roof on.
I noticed that.
And at least I started getting pretty nervous about the chimney, which led into a discussion about what are we gonna do with that chimney? Should we take it down? It's probably 100 years old, blah, 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 which led into a discussion, what do we wanna do long-term for mechanical systems?
Right.
So there's gonna be some mechanical and electrical engineering involved in this project.
It's not included in my services. I think I identified that as
One of the-
other
not
services that you might need.
Yeah, I think you
I
did.
think we talked also a little bit about how you might, get some of that service and control the cost, and one of the ways is to have it all be bidder designed. And again, the contractor you select, and his experience and the type of projects he's used to working on will determine, who he might have available to help you design bid. All that, and I think that can be very successful, especially with vigilance on the part of the building committee and your whole team. And I'm certainly available to provide, comment and review on that. As well. But all that said, I have to tell you, even though this is a modest project, I would be inclined to think you'd be well advantaged to at least consult with an engineer on the systems. You maybe provide a performance specification for what the system should be, maybe have a professional, mechanical, electrical engineer come out and do a due diligence on the building and give you some idea.
That's exactly what I think.
And the reason is design bidders oftentimes are locked into a particular product line, which isn't a bad thing, but they tends to bias their perspective and opinion. They're not engineers usually. If they're very large companies, they may have engineers on staff, but I don't think this is a large enough project to bring somebody
That's
like
right.
that in.
That's right.
And I just think it's nice to have an objective perspective and opinion on what's gonna work for you. And lastly, I think one of the most important things is gonna be energy efficiency for heating.
That's right.
And, you know, if you start, you know, a new fellowship hall, you know, might attract more people. I mean, you know, managing air changes for assembly spaces is very important to provide the, you know, comfort for the people that are there. You know, I know budget's tight, and even though this isn't a huge project in the realm of things, it's a pretty significant project for the church. And there's a lot that's being proposed going on, you know, all over the entire site. And I think it would make sense to try to find the revenue for a little bit of expenditure to, you know, to do a really exhaustive due diligence on all the systems, existing systems and such. I think you'd be money ahead ultimately,
I think you're right.
even if you had to compromise on the initial building project a little
Yeah.
bit. But, you know, these things have a way of working themselves out one way or the other, you know, so I think if you're determined, you can probably.
Well, it's time, I think, that we do that, and just in the roofing project, I was in Minnesota and got a call from the roofer, we discovered our bell tower is actually built in 2 pieces,
Oh.
and the roofers got on it and it started
Oh,
swaying back and forth,
Wow.
so I got a hold of Bill, and you went up in
They're
there.
supposed to, yeah, we went up in there, they're supposed to be bracing it.
Oh.
I don't know if they've done that yet or not.
Yes, they did, I
Did
talked to Bill the other day.
On your task list, is this kind of sequentially the way you see it going, Ken?
You know, as best as I could determine at this point,
So,
it's close.
If we get through all the conditional use and the
What
stuff
page
with
is
the
that,
city,
Bill?
well, I
The
didn't,
pages aren't numbered in.
no, I didn't print out the pictured ones. I didn't wanna use that much ink.
I was the same way.
Okay.
I just did all the
It's that one.
verbiage.
So, down through like 7 would be, correct me if I'm wrong, would that be where you would done enough and would have been through the city that we would have a go-ahead to go through, roughly or not?
Yes, roughly, and,
Okay.
you know, I feel like I should apologize, it's a pretty long list, and normally I wouldn't have been quite so detailed, but I felt like it was important that you understood what the
Right.
basis of my fee was. 1 through 6 here, you know, might seem like a lot of work, but I think it would actually be compressed over not a huge amount of time, and I don't think any one of these steps is huge, you know. It's just that
Right.
they are the steps you have to go through, so, but to answer your question, yes.
That's
So-
that's our understanding too, that we have to have some schematic to formally apply for the CUP and the variance.
You know, you have, I'm certain you have the support of the city as long as you know, follow the rules and go
Right.
through the process. I mean, that's my takeaway. Now, nothing's ever guaranteed, although after a formal pre-application meeting, you guys have had some, what do they call them here, client,
Can,
CAMs, right? And that's informal and that's good stuff, but until you do the formal pre-app, nothing's in writing. I mean, you know, when you do the formal pre-app, you'll get a written report back that'll pretty much outline and tell you where you're at. It'll also tell the team, the building, you know, the building committee and the architect and whoever's involved, what all the final requirements for all of the applications will be. So we'll know, you know, and that could require some adjustment in the scope of work. Maybe something goes away, maybe something's added. But at that point, you'll have a pretty good idea that your project's a go, that they generally support it, and what the guidelines are gonna be to get through the process. Now, the thing is, even what I just said being true, my experience is you're better off being as thoroughly prepared and with as much information as you can before you go for a conditional use permit application, or especially a variance. You know, the variances, you almost never get more than one chance on them. You know, if you fail to get that approved, which I don't think is gonna be the case here again, but I just don't think you ever wanna assume that it's a slam
you
dunk.
wanna go in very.
You wanna go as well prepared as you possibly can, and that's hard sometimes, cause you have to balance initial costs of, you know, for the services to get there against the risk of maybe not getting approved. And I think for you guys, I think on both the CUP and the variance, you know, you've basically already been assured that you'll get staff support, which is the biggest hurdle. But with both of those, it is possible that you'd get some public comment.
Yeah,
Again,
Is
No.
your tea leaf read, is that we'll probably have to do the public version as opposed to the administrative. version.
Well, the variance is,
Yeah, that's public
I
comment.
think you always
to be
have to,
posted.
yeah.
yeah, I'm
And
pretty
It'll have to be
there's a
posted, but-
timeline too,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
for so many days.
Yeah,
I think when we first talked, the thought was that this conditional use permit would not be a public hearing
but
process,
just administrative.
but just administrative, but I'm almost certain that any,
The variance,
And the variance.
well, I think both are gonna be a public process, and they would probably be combined, and I think it'd be to your advantage to combine them. so.
yeah, but they told us that we get a smoking deal if we don't.
Yeah, that's right, two for one. Which, if the prices are, it's a good deal.
So I have a follow-up question to Bill's question, because I'm trying to just get a sense, we were talking earlier before you came about backing up, that if we are anticipating that sometime in the spring, whether it's March, April, or May, we'll just say that as a window, with the preliminary work that needs to be done and then schematics, if we hire you, can you start right away? And this 1 through 6 work would take roughly how long, Ken?
Well, I think that, I mean, the hours allocated are only, about 9 or 10 days worth of actual work. Of course, nothing happens,
Sequentially?
sequentially like that.
A month?
I think, I think realistically, to get everything prepared and submitted, I'm hesitating a little bit because I remember looking at the city's codes for this, and I can't remember what it said, but there are some steps you have to go through that might influence the time frame itself. But I would say a month is pretty reasonable.
Okay,
I could not start on it like tomorrow, but I could start on it within a couple of weeks in earnest. If you decided to hire me, tomorrow, the next day, or by first of next week, I would begin setting up the project immediately. I would contact the city and tell them that I'm gonna be the architect of record, and I would get all the applications and forms and all that stuff, get it all downloaded and start working on that right away.
so I'm hearing, if you're the guy, mid-September start. and
Yeah, or
about
if
30
not
days.
sooner, I mean, and I'm talking about getting at the point where I could devote full energy to it. I mean, that's kinda how I approach these projects.
So then, if that's the case, that we'd be ready to formally submit roughly, say, the middle of October.
Late October, I mean, we could just set that as a goal. Again, we'd probably, we'd wanna try to get in for the pre-application meeting as soon as possible. And I think that we could do that, I'd like to think we could do that by early, no later than mid-October, and maybe be prepared. I'd like to think we could be prepared enough at the pre-application meeting to almost immediately turn around and submit for the CUP and the variance. Basically have everything organized and ready. We would have our pre-app meeting. Anything that's revealed at that point, I think would be a fairly quick fix or adjustment, and then try to go in. Now, the one thing I also don't remember, in fact, I don't think I even asked John about this, is what the CUP variance schedule is. Usually they have a schedule for that.
The only thing I'm recalling is they say the window is 90 to 120 days.
Right. Everybody in this state's allowed, every jurisdiction's allowed 120 days to process a land use permit. And in fact, they have to do it within that, and most jurisdictions don't take that long on something that's not that complicated.
Yeah.
And I consider this not that complicated, not like the one I just did.
So I'm not trying to.
But they won't start the clock ticking until they say we have everything we need.
That's the thing,
Yeah,
see,
that's
they
it,
could
right.
stop the clock ticking
Yeah.
if they don't see something, and, as I recall, that the city of Port Townsend's pretty thorough on their intake, but not as thorough as some jurisdictions. I prefer hyper thorough, I'd rather have them be a pain in the bottom, and know when I go in and
the
they do
front
accept
side.
it,
Yeah.
that we're pretty much ready.
Yeah.
But I think you'd have to be prepared for them, once they do the intake, to maybe within a week, they would come back and say, you know, we actually need a little bit more information on this.
That's okay.
But again, you know, my approach is to anticipate that and to actually give them, you know, more than the minimum so that any questions that they might have could be answered.
So if we were being conservative, and please understand, I'm not trying to pin you down, but just to get a feel here, that if it were submitted at the latest, say, November 1,
Right.
that then we've got 4 months after that, so that's December, January, February, March.
If they took the full 120
And he
days.
said they typically pretty much do,
Yeah.
so that would be March.
They're a little understaffed right now,
Yeah.
so.
So if that were the case, while we're waiting for all that to chug, we can begin design development, right?
I think so. I mean, I guess you can, and I think I would suggest that you do that, because I think we would be going into this with eyes wide open and with a fairly high degree of confidence.
So if that were the case and we get design development should be able to get done while the city's churning away on the CUP and the variance.
Right,
So then by March, April timeframe, we should be, assuming we get past the city, we could have construction documents by April or so.
right.
Okay.
And, you know, we probably would wanna finish design development, anything that's you know, that still needs to be resolved, that isn't going to affect the conditional use permit or the variance. You know, subtle details of massing or the
Sure.
window treatments or whatever, you know.
Where does the kitchen sink go?
You're right,
Yeah, yeah.
although some of that should be pretty well thought out in general terms before we submit, I think. Just because we don't wanna be changing floor plans dramatically if we
Yeah.
can avoid it, although it's not impossible. And so we could at least get to that point, and then if, you know, to be conservative, we could let it sit until you actually get approval. And then the final permit, you know, the scope of work that I've been given for the final permit application drawings is not gonna take very long to complete, you know, a couple of weeks, especially if we can schedule it. Now, you know, once we submit for the CUP variance, you know, especially if we combine them, I'm assuming within a week to 2 weeks, we will get a tentative date for the hearing itself. I mean, they should schedule it.
Yeah.
And again, I apologize, you know, I didn't actually discuss all that with John, and I meant to, but,
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right, this is
Yeah.
pretty general. And as we begin this work, assuming you're the guy, you're gonna need, tell us what kind of people time you're gonna need from one or all of us.
well, I'm assuming that the building committee's been given the authority for decision-making, at the upper level. What I'm not certain about is what the process will be for final review and approval of the design documents. I mean, you have a design concept pretty well, you know, roughed out, and you know, I mean, even if you wanted me to exercise my creative energies, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense what you have already, given the historic context for the project. And so I don't see a lot of reason to mess with it too much in terms of the massing and the looks and the aesthetic of it. I think there's gonna be some effort that needs to be spent on massaging the plan for this, both from a functional perspective, but also from an exiting perspective, because that's gonna be
Health and safety.
Yes.
that's gonna be the critical thing that,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna, you know, you asked me not to spend a lot of time on the drawings, you know, detailing this, but just to come up with a plan so that it can be permitted and approved, because it's gonna be for the most part non-structural, at least that's the assumption.
Well, historically, over the last 15 months, we've been meeting about, as a committee, once a month. But we've had various subcommittees, the 3 of us interviewing architects is a good example. So I would anticipate there might be 1 or 2 of us that are the point person with you. And then, once you have a deliverable, design development type deliverable, it would come before this committee. And we probably also, wouldn't you think we wanna run this by the trustees and some of the
Well, I
other
think the whole
standing committees?
congregation at some
Yeah, I
point
do
would,
too.
Yeah.
what those
I do
points
too.
are, it depends on the deliverables we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, you know, I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure I assumed at least, coming to a service or after a service and being available to answer, you put the drawings up on an easel, in the lobby,
I
and the
think, I
narthex
think
before the service, and then.
that's true, but not the preliminary
No, probably
drawings,
not.
but once we're
We could,
kind
I think we could handle the preliminary with
Yeah.
the congregation,
Yeah.
but the congregation, I understand, is gonna have to approve this.
yes,
I mean, the church conference we had gave us the green light to proceed with the architect and the plan, but they've gotta approve, and I would think at that time, maybe even an information meeting before we actually have the church
Right.
conference.
we'll probably have
Whatever
a
that
couple
is.
of those. And I'm thinking too, we're gonna begin talking to builders next week, Ken, and that we want a builder to be part of our team as well.
But as far as, what I'm gonna need, I mean, as long as I have a reliable point of contact, I mean, lots of questions come up, no matter how thoroughly prepared you think you are, there's always, so as long as I have, access to somebody to get, to ask a question and then, have that same avenue to get a question answered, but,
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna, need to be any more complicated than that.
In
You know-
in this first section, say between the middle of September and the middle of October, there's gonna be some deliverables that you'll produce, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would tend to, provide, documentation for each
Those
task.
pieces, yeah.
Right, I mean, I will review the code review that I do. Keep in mind, I mean, I'm gonna have a lot of communication with staff at the city even before we have a pre-application meeting. I mean, I wanna make sure I know, I wanna feel like I'm pretty sure I know what the outcome of the pre-application meeting is gonna be before we have it. So there'll probably be information that I'll wanna share with you, I mean, especially if there's a small surprise. And again, that's why I spent so much time talking to them ahead of time. I mean, doing things that I normally don't do until I'm under contract, because I know that the program and the schedule is aggressive for you all. So I feel, again, pretty well prepared, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding, but I'm gonna wanna make sure and feed every, all the final documentation from each task, the review of the codes, the life and health safety analysis, what the issues are, what hurdles we might have to work around. And so I would feed that to you, obviously you would get the preliminary design, would be a deliverable. The preliminary design is basically gonna be bringing up what you've already done to, through my office, and then basically feeding it back. I mean, any little adjustments that I think need to be made. There's still some discussion, I think, that needs to be had about the addition and, with respect to the setback. And some of those other things, there's some connection, fine details of the connection between the new structure and the existing and all that kind of stuff, so.
Have you worked in Jefferson County before?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
How comfortable are you and how much experience do you have in advising us as you go along as to, what might work better than something else as you design?
Well, if I see something that you're telling me you would like to do, and I think there's a better, or it's unwise to do it, or there's a better way to do it, I'll share that with you. I'm not gonna, throw a fit if you don't, like my way about it. I mean, I would never let you do something that you can't do, or would be, I don't know, horribly inappropriate to do. I mean, certainly I don't think you would try to do something that would be,
No,
against the rules.
I don't mean legally, I
But,
mean,
yeah.
because I, assume that you know.
Out of ignorance.
You know that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like,
But if I felt like
have you
you
thought
were.
about this?
Yeah, especially when it comes to space planning. I mean, the truth is, space
Exactly.
planning's
Yeah.
everything. I mean, that is what makes architecture resonate with people. I mean,
Yes.
the details, the aesthetics, the style are all important, but if the space planning doesn't work, it really doesn't work at all. That's what people relate to without even, sometimes realizing it. So when it comes to space planning, I feel like I'm very good at that. It's one of my strong points. And so I would certainly, advise you on, in fact, that's what I see as being the main part of the design consultation on this project is, especially with respect to this area. And then again, I'm imagining there might be some opportunities, with respect to the new fellowship hall and how it connects and the new kitchen location and all that stuff. Again, it's pretty straightforward, but there's always nuances and subtleties. So.
When you first met with us, Ken, did we show you photographs of the fellowship hall at the Coopville Methodist Church?
I don't think you showed me any photographs, you referenced it, and I went onto the internet and tried to see what I could find. You'd said that, all that you told me was that you liked you liked it.
what they did, the vaulted
Yeah, yeah.
approach and
Yeah.
big windows, lots of
Right.
light, and the kitchen with a pass-through adjoining.
So, you know, I guess I didn't include that in here, I was gonna put that in the appendix, cause I did look at some of that when I found on the internet, but, so. You know, I think, vaulting that space, you know, Fellowship Hall needs to have as much volume for acoustical reasons as possible, because it's an assembly space. And so I think you're gonna wanna, you know, find a way to do that, and it's a fairly small structure in the realm of things, so I think, you know, a vault in there is gonna be the only way you're gonna get the volume to control noise.
Yeah,
We know
because
the
this one
space
is
doesn't do it.
horrible.
Yeah, I mean, this room echoes just sitting here in conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it-
When you
It's
get 40
awful.
people down there
Yeah.
after service,
It's probably deafening at
Yeah.
times.
It is.
So once the plans get turned into the city, how long do you think it'll be till we get a building permit and we can actually start construction?
You know, it's probably gonna be 2 to 4 weeks, it really depends on when we submit, you just never know what, you know, what's going on, and it just depends on where you are in line when you turn it in. What we're gonna be permitting, the staff will be really familiar with the project by the time they get a permit application, because it'll already have been past all their desks as part of the CUP and variance. But we'll just have to wait and see at the time. I think Port Townsend is generally pretty good, but, you know, I'm assuming it'll probably be more like a month to get through it. There'll probably be a career, you know. These guys always like to issue some correction notices, you know, even if.
Gotta find something.
They usually try to find something.
Yeah.
one thing that I think would be helpful, we very roughly sketched it out here. If you're the architecture firm of choice, is to put together a schedule of when we think key things are, because we were just talking tonight.
Right.
Don's he lived down in Kennewick, and they have well, you tell him about your trailer, and the conversations he was just having, when can we get the trailer up here?
Well, we had a mission team and they put together a construction trailer that's got chop saws and table saws and hammers and all that stuff.
Right.
And anyway, I asked them, I said, well, can we borrow it? And, so they says, well, we'll have to see, and we were looking at 6 months, 8 months to borrow the thing, and we were looking at springtime sometime. So that's when we would wanna coordinate, you know, is it, if we can go pick it up in May or whenever, so that.
Yeah, you know, normally I would make a schedule for myself. I mean, again, there's some time critical. I mean, you three made it apparent when we first met that there was gonna be sort of a time critical, you know, aspect of the project, that once you made the decision to go, you wanted to, you know, be able to build as early in the spring as possible. was my
Well, that's
recollection.
a goal. I don't know that
Yeah.
it's not cast in concrete.
Well, and I'm not gonna prepare to guarantee that yet
Well,
until we.
here's the thing, we're doing far out early planning, and he's talking to people saying, well, when, and Dale Kelly is contacting our conference VIM teams, so we may be bringing in people from
Which
all over
VIM,
the
VIM
country.
is volunteers
Yeah.
in mission,
Yep,
okay,
I remember.
okay,
So
okay.
we're trying to figure out, you know, to target all of this, that's all.
Right.
We want a schedule that's reasonable and is doable.
And, you know, what I would be doing between now and like, say, the middle of September, if you were to hire me right away, between now and when I could actually start in the project in earnest, would be doing some of that research. Like, what I'd want to do first off is call John and Michael and tell them I'm gonna be doing the project, and then sit down and review all of the actual process schedules. I'd like to know what I tend to reverse engineer my schedule to, you know,
What they.
target dates that they have for when things
Okay.
could be submitted. I mean, for public hearings, usually they do them a couple of times a month, but some jurisdictions only do them once a month. And again, I forgot to ask that question. So I would try to look out that way and then work backwards. You know, look out to where you think you'd like to begin borrowing the trailer and start
Okay.
construction. And then work backwards, make sure that we can make that fit. I'm guessing we can, even with the 120-day, you know, timeframe.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the first thing I would do, and then we could have that within a couple of weeks, you know, worked out. It'd require probably a little back and forth, you know, talking to your folks in Kennewick and looking at what our options at our end are, and then we would just put that together.
Yeah.
You know, every schedule's gotta have a little slip time in it, you know, so you gotta be a little bit prepared, you know, for things to slide, but,
I would think our schedule is gonna be more dependent on the contractor on how he sees the progress of the construction going, more
Right.
than what you've got, it's basically what he sees, what the needs are and the
Well,
manpower.
and we'd even wanna work with that as much as we
Yes.
can, I mean,
Yes.
because I think,
You
you know,
gotta push it all together.
good contractors are always busy, and they like to, you know, the advantage of negotiating is they get to plan out ahead too, which is nice for them. So anyway, that's all the stuff I see us doing the first couple of weeks while we're getting the rest of the project set up and moving ahead.
Anybody else with questions?
I'm questioned out.
Me too.
Okay. Tony? Okay. Well, thank you, Ken.
Yeah,
Did
thank
you
you
get the
very much.
contract form? that email?
I did.
He seems real.
I think so.
How does the price estimate fit in with our estimate for our?
For architectural fees, I think he was saying about 16, and I'd always thought it was gonna be somewhere between 15 and 20.
So we're right
Probably
at,
will,
I
we're
think
right
so.
there, okay.
yeah,
The other guy, was a little bit more vague,
he was.
but we can certainly ask him.
But now Ken said, you know, there's one thing here that he was talking about required, civil engineering required, is not included, so. Yeah,
That's-
that we're gonna
that's-
have to,
That's gonna be the structural engineering
Yeah.
fee.
yeah.
And that usually,
that
that'll
sep-
probably run a couple grand, I suspect.
So is that separate in our budget, or was that
I haven't
included in
tightened
the?
the budget that tight,
Okay,
but if he's gonna be roughly 15 or 16, and the structural engineering's gonna be a couple grand. I mean, it's pretty, there shouldn't be any structural down here, there's not really any
Not
structural.
that we know of.
In
Yeah,
in
that's-
Robbins,
that
there
was a
shouldn't be any
surprise.
structural in the sanctuary work, it should be pretty simple building, the fellowship hall.
What about the architectural detailing? How detailed, because he doesn't include that in there.
Well, that was kind of your question.
Yeah,
And
and
I
that's
think-
where I'm kind of like, if he isn't doing it, who's gonna do it?
I think we are.
Yeah.
I think,
I think
you know,
we
can.
I've
Well,
seen
then-
some architects that even specify a brand of paint and a color. I mean,
Yeah,
you can go crazy on this stuff.
well, what I'm thinking, and this is what is a little scary to me, because we've been through this before. If something goes wrong, and at what point, you know, each points to the other one and says, well, you know, it wasn't in my realm, it wasn't in my realm. And so you're left holding the bag. So if he, in other words, if this guy plans it all out and then somebody gets it wrong in the details and it comes out in the final,
I think that's part and parcel of, you know, that I can bring to the table, cause I've been through this before.
Well,
Well,
He
what kind of stuff would he not be
I
designing?
don't think
You're
he's
saying
gonna
paint.
specify a paint color, I don't think he's gonna specify a brand of.
What
this
about like the
kitchen sink.
exterior look of the building?
Oh, I think
yeah,
he'll
the
do that.
elevations.
You'll have ideas on
All
He'll
the
do that.
elevations.
The-
And
What did you
about
say?
The elevations, those are, that's the exterior. Is he
Elevations,
doing
what
that?
do
He
you
would be
mean?
doing that.
That's
He'd be
the
doing that.
exterior drawings,
Yeah.
drawings of the exterior of the building.
He'll
So
do
he
that.
wouldn't do the final pieces of the interior.
He
No
probably
interior.
will have some general ideas about certain things. He'll probably specify like the first floor bathrooms
He
should
says,
have tile on the floor. I would expect
Oh.
he's gonna do that, but not which tile and which color
Which
ground.
color.
well,
and
he
everything
says
else.
interior design is by others, so what does that mean? I think we need, does that mean that he's not gonna design it at all, or
I
that
know,
he's gonna?
gonna show you,
talk 'em
he's gonna show you the
paint
restrooms,
colors.
what they look like, where the sink should be. I
That's
think
sort
that's the discussion we would have with him. The thing with any of these architects is we wanna, and I think we're gonna have to feel our way a little bit, that we can hire them to do every bit of it.
Right.
depending
That's
what we're paying
right.
for it. And if
but
we
it's
wanna-
gonna cost more.
Yeah.
But somebody's gotta come up with the detailed plans for the construction guys, right?
So that's all
Yeah.
done.
We're-
That's
But
part of
done.
it.
this
That'd
is,
be-
from what I
That's part-
understand, this is the
That'd be
finish
done.
work. This
Yeah.
is the stuff that we'll
This
be
is
doing
what color-
Well,
ourselves.
that's what I wanna make sure.
Do you want black tile, do you want
Well,
gray tile?
typically
Do you want-
what they'll do, when you get final construction drawings, it shows where all the walls are, where the doors are, all that kind of stuff.
Will he
But he-
specify 2x6 rather than 2x4?
Yes. He
That sort of
absolutely,
thing,
Yeah.
okay,
absolutely, he will.
okay.
But, and I expect that he's gonna specify ceramic tile on the floor in the bathrooms, but he's not gonna specify what specific tile or what grout color.
But he'll tell like, here's where the toilet's gonna go, here's where the sink's
That's
gonna go.
exactly right.
And we'll have
And that's-
discussion with him. About that on this
That part
committee.
of the process is what's called design development, where he
Okay.
comes in and he's got, take the kitchen that's gonna be in Robbins Hall. And as you know, Dale and some other gals have some preliminary
Yeah.
ideas. So at some point, Ken would talk to them, and then he may come back with, I've seen architects come back with scheme A, B, and C for the kitchen. With the refrigerator here, and then the refrigerator there, and then the refrigerator there, and they move everything around. So say that he does that with those ladies, and they kind of agree, well, we like the refrigerator dressed in this location. We like the stove in this location. So that's an iterative process. And they go around and around until it's kind of settled. And you do that with all the pieces of our project. Until we're all pretty well settled, yeah, this is what we want.
But is that what he means that he doesn't do with interior design? I mean,
It's down to the very last
Yeah.
detail, paint colors.
He would do the moving the kitchen around. I think what I hear and I don't like is we don't want him to do too many iterations. The kitchen would be a good example. What we need to do as a committee is get the ladies that have the opinions on the committee, get them to iron out their differences or come to
First.
some kind of consensus before. Or maybe he just comes in, and here's the way I think as an architect, your bathrooms or kitchen should be laid out. And maybe we take that to them and say, what do you think? We don't want him to come to 5 different meetings with the
right,
kitchen group, cause he's
Right.
gonna be charging you each time.
That's
he's
right.
doing it.
That's
Well,
right,
we're gonna have to have an idea of where the plumbing's gonna go, where the
Yeah.
electrical's gonna
exactly.
go,
Yeah.
where the drains are and stuff like that,
Exactly.
so.
And, everybody has a copy of your proposal,
Okay.
so, without further ado, you wanna make an opening statement, go ahead.
Well, I think I've already done it before for most of you, but I've lived on the peninsula since 1969. I've got some large firm experience for 10 years, and I managed a Olympia office, a large Olympia office in Port Angeles for 10 years, and then I went on my own. So I've associated with a lot of large firms, so I haven't been tucked away in the woods, so to speak. I've had my own firm since 1983, and about half our workload is residential, and the other half is commercial, some religious, some residential, or some institutional. Everything from car dealerships to movie theaters to libraries to educational facilities. We've had a wide range of experience in different materials and different uses. And we're used to working with committees, and we enjoy working with committees, so I know that's a big part of this project. And so I think we're capable and we're willing, and we've got time to do it. That's a brief thing. The rest of it's in the brochure. And I did bring a brochure if you want to look at some other projects we've had over the past 30 years.
Is your project approach in here, Bill, kind of sequential?
Yeah, probably, yes.
So you're getting down, if I look, it's on page 2, and you get down to the conditional use and the variances, you're about, almost halfway down?
Well,
that
that's,
right?
yes.
Okay, so that's the steps, I'm just trying to understand, because I've worked with the county a little bit, but not very much, but the city I have not.
Well, in order to go through the conditional use permit and the variances,
Right,
you know,
we have to do those, right.
we have to have a design, have to have a site plans and at least a schematic design of what your proposals are. So we have to kind of go through those things, and to do that, we've got to review codes, ordinances, and have some meetings with the city, and certainly a lot with you people to make sure we're on the right track. And then the real sort of architecture starts from that point on.
Design development.
Well, and actually even redevelopment of the schematic too. I mean, there's probably, it's very rough at that point, and so we need to work with you and even the congregation if we need to refine that before we get into DDs.
Okay, okay. If we were to choose your firm for this project, how quickly could you get started, Bill?
Next week?
Okay. And you've obviously got some preliminary work to do just to get your head into things and review codes and all of that. How quick, and the reason I ask this is that we're doing, I guess what I would call long-range planning. Don was mentioning he's got some contacts at a church down in Kennewick where they have a construction trailer that we may be able to use. Another member of our committee who's not here tonight is contacting the volunteer organizations in the Greater Methodist Church. So we're talking, some preliminary dates next spring. So just to back into that, if you got started right away, by the time you would have schematics and whatever is actually required to get to the city for the variance and conditional use permits, because I know their window is 90 to 120
Right.
days. How much time, if you started tomorrow, to be ready to go to the city?
Well, actually, we start with the city next week with initial contact and
Okay.
getting additional information. And then probably the first thing would be to also meet with you guys again to just to review more detail. I got a glimpse of what you wanted, but really need more detail. And then there's some on-site measuring. All that can take place the next week. And usually the initial concept design, once we have a pretty good idea of what you're looking for, we can turn that around within a week to 10 days. So, and filling out once we have that and approval from that, and filling out the forms, or assisting you in filling out the forms, won't take that long. So, let's just say 3 weeks before we're ready with the permits to set in, if everything goes
Okay.
correctly, so.
So
Because
kind of,
we try to.
I'll just round it out to say 30 days.
Yeah,
By the time we're ready to start the
'cause your
clock with the
Yeah,
city.
your big weight is with the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And once that's approved, then we can start right back in again. And once we have the design approved, we're really pretty responsive. And the biggest delays will be with you getting approvals from yourselves, to make sure that everything is okay and we're on budget and everything. We turn it around pretty fast, usually on a weekly basis.
okay, that's
that
good
sort
to
of thing.
know.
Try to keep
So
it moving.
deliverables in terms of refining schematics or
Yes, it's
design
usually
development,
a week
you
apart.
can turn them in about a week?
Yes,
Okay,
depending upon holiday schedules and that sort of thing, but it's usually pretty quick.
okay. And you have about 3 people in your firm? There's yourself and another principal?
And our main guy he's who we rely on a lot. He does. He's the one that fills out the paperwork and keeps us going. I'm the sketcher, and I do most of the schematic work. And my partner does a little bit of everything, but Bill kind of does the construction documents and specifications and. all that.
That's, I don't know if we asked you when we saw you before, do you use some kind of CAD
Yeah,
program?
it's a CAD program.
Okay, which one is it?
It's CAD. It's a
AutoCAD?
AutoCAD.
Okay,
I think it's the latest version of it. We've got several versions in our office, but because some of the stuff is on different.
that's
Versions.
really nice because we don't necessarily have to deliver paper copies, we can email this stuff.
Well, we can PDF you files on
Yeah,
a regular
that's
basis.
great.
So
That's great. Okay,
On your fee schedule, you've got full service and negotiated contract. Can you explain, I think we talked about that a little bit the last time.
And I have a feeling we're not gonna be doing the full fee thing. And in talking with Mr. Weeding a little more, I think what you guys really want is a design-build process. And we're doing a commercial project in Port Angeles right now, and it's the way the energy code is written now, it's almost impossible not to have a mechanical, electrical guy on board during the permitting process because of all the information they want. The forms have to be filled out. And I haven't gone through that with Jefferson County or with Port Townsend, but I'm sure they're just as stickier than Clown County.
yeah.
And so, in this case, having it's a small enough project, I think we can avoid having mechanical, electrical engineers involved. If we have a contractor with good subcontractors that
That can help us with
that can
designing.
help with that. We can do the drafting, but part of it, they need to have a layout of the mechanical system, if that's appropriate. And there's lighting requirements that very severe. Washington has a very
We're
restricted.
fortunate in that we have a member of the church who's an electrical engineer.
Good.
We also have a member who's a member of this committee who's a heating contractor.
Good.
So we've got some resources we can draw on to help
Okay.
us with those things.
And that would help. I mean, that saves us a lot. And if we're negotiating with with a builder contract at the beginning, he becomes part of the team and saves us saves you money.
We're gonna start interviewing builders next week.
Okay, you can we usually do that with the client after a schematic design has been prepared. So that they can see what they're getting involved in and see if they're, want to be, right now you have really not much to show them. You can do that if you want, but usually we wait until the schematic design, or at least a concept design is finished, and you've got the time while you're doing the hearings with the county or the city to select a contractor to be on the team. I would just, you can do it either way, but I would recommend you wait until at least the schematic study has been approved
Okay,
and you have a direction.
okay,
It might make a difference on who wants to do what.
okay.
You mentioned that you would also work on an hourly fee. What is your hourly fee?
95.
95.
And the fee I proposed for to get through that first portion was $1,500, but in actual time, that's actually probably a third or a fourth of what time we'll have into it. But it's gonna be more involved than that. We're gonna have more than 15 or 16 hours involved. It's gonna be 45 or 60 at that point. But we've also made, we try to contribute back to nonprofits and churches as best we can. So to try to help you out as best we can. So
That's nice.
Okay.
We appreciate that.
In terms of our overall construction budget, as we penciled it out now, is about 320. So, and I see you had said not to exceed 9%. So if it were 10%, your fee might be somewhere around 30K.
well,
For the
that's
whole
with
thing,
mechanical,
that's for the
that's
whole
with mechanical,
enchilada.
The
electrical,
other one's
All of
4%.
it.
all of it.
It's only
Okay.
4% for,
If we have, yeah, and it could be less than that too, you know, so it's, once we have the schematic
Around
design, the concept
12,000.
done, we'll have a better idea of what drawings are necessary and what we have to provide in the way of paperwork to the city. And then we can give you a lump sum and work hourly not to exceed that if you like. So you have a fixed number to work with.
So if I'm reading this over for about a third time.
it'd be
If-
about
if-
12,000.
There's so many variables in here.
I
I'm sure it's
know, I know.
confusing.
You have to highlight the things that catch you the first time.
Yeah,
That's what I-
So, but realistically, on a $320,000 project, if it were 10%, that'd be 32,000. Half of that would be 5%, which would be 15 or 16,000. So That's probably more likely,
And that's probably high too,
okay,
you know, cause we're giving away, essentially, $4,000 in upfront to begin
okay.
with.
So it might be
So-
somewhere 10 to 12,
I would say 12 at the highest, you know,
Okay.
at this point,
Okay.
without, but again, we'll know a little bit more after we get through all this, first part, but,
okay,
uh,
all right, that's good. Don, you look like you're ready to pop with a question here,
No, I'm,
good. Jill?
No,
I-
not.
So are you saying then, because David mentioned the in-house heating guy, the in-house electrical engineer, that those two are people that you could consult with?
that, or if we have a contractor on board with his.
See, my only
his
concern about the
consultants.
contractor on board, I'm wondering about the process of what our approval system is in order to get to signing a contract with a contractor. Is a contractor gonna be willing to work with us in all this if we haven't signed any kind of contract
Well,
with
that's,
them?
with everybody that we've talked to and my own experience, there's two ways to go at this. One is that we work exclusively with Bill or firm B, and we get all the drawings done, and then you let it out for bid, which means extra printing costs, a lot of extra work and expense for the architect to prepare that. The other approach is that you interview and select a builder who works with us through the whole design process, with the assumption that he's gonna be the guy, but we make it very clear that we are aiming for a negotiated contract. It's not that he says the number's X and we just roll over.
It's, the thing about negotiated contracts is that the books are open. Meaning that all of his figures you're able to see and look at, whether or not it's electrical, mechanical, sheetrock, whatever it might be, his labor, his overhead and profit, it's all on the table. And so if we see something that looks out of line, whether it be the mechanical or electrical, we can ask for additional bids. I've done this a number of times, and when we've picked a contractor, it's his job to lose. And because there's nothing that he'd done yet that he can give numbers to, so he can't tell you what it's about. But during that interview process, you find out who a superintendent is, how he works, how he charges, what his overhead and profit is, who he uses as subcontractors, is he willing to look at other subcontractors? All those sorts of things, you get to know the guy. And it's a fairly small project that most guys can handle that are qualified contractors. And it's a small community, the whole peninsula is small, so you know you hear rumors who's bad, yeah, and that comes out
Oh,
really
yeah.
fast.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
And so you have to be able to perform or you can't stay in business on the peninsula.
Yeah.
And so
And-
you can,
and
So the
right now-
contract though is not signed until,
No.
all it
Okay,
is
that's
intent,
right.
is an
I see.
intent to, and when the,
We're simply inviting a builder to join our,
and if at the end we decide, so even, it's not a verbal contract either? I mean,
No.
you can back out at any time,
That's
is that
right.
right?
that's right.
it's his job to lose.
Okay.
And if he
That's right.
comes in at 450,000 and is not unwilling to negotiate, I mean, you can walk away and go to somebody else.
Remember the conversations we had with the UU guys? That they were working with a certain builder and the drawings and design work was pretty much done and the builder said it's gonna cost this amount and the building committee over there said, well, we only have this amount. And it went around about 2 or 3 times till they came together. And that's what I anticipate. But back to your question, Tony, when you talk about mechanical, if we hired a certain sub and he's got a heating contractor that he's used for years, and this guy is really sharp, and we start talking about what we want, and Don Campbell and I have started some discussions, if we replace this boiler, replace that big old blue heater thing where we're spending money heating water all the time, and all of that, and we'll see if, how much Will Litzler wants to get involved on the electrical side. So we can, and as Bill said, that if you have a really good electrical contractor that knows his P's and Q's, he can start to put things together. As you know, we got panels all over the place here. There's at least 3 or 4.
And it may be something that's over somebody's head of somebody, and
Yeah.
in that case, we still can get an electrical engineer in or
Yeah,
mechanical
yeah.
engineer to solve whatever issue it is. But anyway, this gives you an opportunity where, I'm not trying to downplay mechanical and electrical engineers, because I use them a lot, and they have a wealth of knowledge. But this may be small enough that we can get by without having that.
A true, honest to God mechanical engineer. Most mechanical subcontractors or electrical subcontractors should be perfectly capable of helping us design what we need here.
And to kind of help your concerns a little bit, the specifications and materials are developed with the contractor, the selected contractor. So we kind of design the foundation system that, whether it's whatever floor joist he likes using, that sort of thing, whatever might be particular to his sort of thing. And he's also supposed to help us if we, any of us, pick out something that might be out of line from a cost standpoint. And we do have a little bit of a design issue here in that, in the last time you showed me the sketch, you're building 3 feet from the property line,
That's correct.
okay?
5 feet.
That's right, thanks, Bill. We are 3
Our
feet now.
current one is 3 feet.
3
We're
feet.
meeting
We're coming
the
back to
current
5.
setback according to the city.
Okay,
5 foot.
within anything closer than 10 feet requires a parapet wall or a 2-hour wall or a 2-hour fire construction, but that's back at least, in this case, 5 feet or 10 feet from the property line. So, and any part of that structure has to be 2-hour for that 5 feet. So it makes design, that one you had with the roof going this way,
Vaulted, yes.
vaulted that way, well, we can't start that vault till we're 5 feet away, or we run into, because it's too hard to make it. We can make part of that 2-hour construction, but anything that piece of structure touches has to be 2 hours as well. So if like a truss went all the way across, it just starts multiplying. And so there's some schemes we have to come up with that would satisfy that particular requirement without, and still trying to keep
So theoretically, what you're getting at, we may have to change the orientation of the building.
possibly, yes.
Yeah.
Or we,
Or materials.
if we had the gable running the other way, we can make that work, and then have a gable coming out the other way as an entrance or something of that nature.
Yeah.
We would have to do something like that to make it work. But that was just the first thing and that's probably
Popped in there.
yeah. And I looked that up before I came down here just to,
Get refreshed.
yeah.
Yes, okay.
Those are the little things that make a big difference.
Yes.
Jill, hit him with your question that we were beating around earlier.
Oh, about the,
Detail of finishes.
yeah, how much detail, if we select the negotiated contract and the hourly things, where's the line? Would
We
we
can
have a
go-
pretty detailed line of what you would provide?
We
and-
can go as little as far as you want, and so if you have, the restrooms we have to detail by code, so they're completely detailed.
So what does detail mean?
Well, that's showing the height of grab bars, of mirrors, wainscoting, all that sort of stuff.
Okay,
Typically, you would specify, for example, tile floor, but not necessarily a specific tile or a specific grout color.
Yeah, or vinyl or something, and if we had outline set of specifications, we'd have an allowance for so much a square foot for tile or yardage for vinyl, that sort of stuff, and whether or not it has a vinyl base or a tile
Well,
base or
and
whatever.
some code stuff might be, like a cement board or something like that?
It has to
that
be
you think,
impervious in the bathroom, so it's either a coat base, or rubber base, or tile floor, or something of that nature, and it has to, wainscot has to go up so far, and there's regulations on the, where the grab bars go and what height they are, that sort of thing, so those would have to be detailed for permitting. It's the other things that, and again, we can probably cut down the amount we have to do, because it's not, we're working with one person rather than, 10, that are bidding it. So if you want advice, or we will do interior elevations, doesn't take that long. If you want to see what different areas look like, and we have to do sections through the building, so when we do sections through, we show what's on the other side in a elevation form, so, and make call-outs for that sort of thing.
Okay.
So we're bare boning here as best we can, but we can infill that as much as you'd like, And part of that fee is if you want construction administration. Now,
Contract administration.
construction administration,
Construction
yeah,
administration.
if you want someone
Like
here to.
project management?
Yes,
Yeah.
so review project, review payment requests, and do all the paperwork. We can do that as, usually it's once or twice a week, but we could do it on a monthly basis if it's, or not at all, depending on who the contractor is, unless you have a question. Then we can run down and answer the questions, And we respond by phone calls and other things. Emails, and there's no charge for the contractor calls with questions, we don't charge for that. It's all part of the service.
What is, and your hourly, fee schedule, are you
It-
charging us for travel time between
No.
here and PA?
No, we treat it as a local call.
Okay, okay.
So there's no housing, no lodging, no meals, no gas.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Great.
I don't
Bill?
think of it as local when I go to PA, I know that.
No.
When it's time to get on the code to get Victoria, I think, oh man, it's a whole hour and
Well,
whatever, you get
Yeah.
used to walking to things in town and.
it used to be
It seems like-
that 30% of our workload was in Jefferson County, but since the Great Depression, it sort of dropped off quite a bit.
you guys did a lot of work in Collar Point, didn't you?
Yes, quite a bit.
And you
lot of
did the, what I'm remembering, you did the, First Federal Bank building on Sims Way,
Mhm.
and, you
That's a
done any
nice building.
churches over here?
Well, we did the addition to the Presbyterian Church 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, and didn't you do, Bank of America downtown?
That was one of the first, that was with the firm I was working with from Olympia.
Okay,
That was 74 or something,
okay,
a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was 12 then.
Nice try.
That's good. All right,
I don't think I had any.
well, anybody else have any questions?
No, it was just on your fee one, I saw your fee not to exceed $1,500, and I said, is that a typo?
Well,
When I first read that, I said, I was gonna ask that same question.
Yeah, that's just for that first portion of it,
Yeah,
and,
Yeah.
and even then, I got a couple of worn out cards here. I thought I brought more in my wallet, but
I've got one, so.
okay,
All right, I'm good,
and you have my contact information in here, so.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Hey, you're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank you
your
very
time.
much.
Thanks,
Sure,
Bill.
all right.
Yeah. We'll
Well, regardless
hopefully
of-
get around to a decision pretty quickly.
Good luck if,
well, thanks.
good luck to you all if.
Thank you,
I'm not
good luck
involved,
on the
so.
golf
Thanks,
course.
Bill.
Great, thank you. Hey, you're welcome. You bet.
Help you back through the construction.
I think I can make it.
All right, thanks again.
Should pass that hard hats. Go out through there.
I know who I'm voting for.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that?
I
Yeah,
like this guy.
Me too,
Do you?
Bill, yeah. He actually had, he pointed out some things, I think his experiences, yeah, I don't know, he just came across as a lot more knowledgeable, and I like his tiered system of, you know, menu system of working, and I think he just has a better feel to me.
So what do y'all think?
They could both do the job. I think we'd get the same kind of tier out of either one of them. First time Ken talked about that also. I think both of them will work with us. Our job, I think, is to not let the costs creep, which can by the more and more contact. But I think we can control that piece of it.
I think so too.
I thought that when I read that thing, the bill, the $1,500 to get us to that point, it was really cheap, so I knew he was not, if that wasn't a typo, that he was,
Giving something away.
yeah, because you compare that with Ken's. But he was estimating a lot of hours, Ken was, I can't imagine they'd spend that many hours getting to the, I mean, what do you say?
Well, isn't he saying $12,000 to $13,000? The other guy is saying at least 16,000 something.
15
Yeah,
or 16,
16.8.
So Bill's a little cheaper.
It might end up
No,
being
it's
$5,000
the
to
difference.
$10,000 cheaper, actually.
It's the difference.
A lot cheaper, because, you know, Bill's saying we don't really need to hire, you know, the engineer, and
The
here he's saying the
mechanical.
civil engineer
The
is
mechanical.
required.
Yeah, well,
No, he's not saying it's required, he was saying that he.
Somebody else would take care of it. It says by
Well, the
others.
contractor, it depends, it's gonna depend, and you might, depending on which one of them you hire, you still may end up having to get, we may not be comfortable with the contractor having either, maybe we like a contractor that has a good electrical,
Yeah,
but we don't like the mechanical. So then we're faced with the decision of bringing somebody in.
I
anyways.
don't think, you're exactly right, but I don't think in either case, we have to have professional
No,
mechanical
No.
or professional
yeah.
engineering.
Not
In
for
either
this
case,
project.
though, we are gonna have to have structural.
But if, is a contractor the part we negotiate with and we say, you know, because a lot of this is, we're looking for volunteer hours. And so if we say, we have a guy who does electrical, we have a guy who does heating, will you work with them on the design part of it? Is that something we have to negotiate with the contractor?
Well, I had a conversation today with Bob Little. They're widely recognized as a darn good contractor. On the expensive side, Purnell used them to build his house. And my conversation with Bob was, first of all, as a general contractor, have you worked with volunteers in churches? Yes. Then I asked him about his subcontractors. And I started on electrical. Frederickson is very good. I've used them on my own house and on other projects, and they've been worked around here as well.
They're not cheap either, though.
But the point is that, and then Bob mentioned another electrical firm I wasn't familiar with. And I said, first of all, electrical and plumbing trades are very fussy about who does what work, because it's inspected by the state, L&I out of PA. But I said, will your electrical contractor allow us to nail up outlet and switch boxes? Can we drill holes in the studs? Can we pull wire? The answer is yes. So I like that, because that's an opportunity to bring our square footage costs down. That's an example. And when it gets time to be a mechanical person, and I'm sensitive to Don, that I think we want some, and I've been on the phone with a couple of them already, and I think they have a high level of sophistication. So whichever builder we choose, I wanna talk to them about their subcontractors and what level of sophistication do they have. And if we feel comfortable, I think that's part of what we gotta go through when we start talking to builders, is who's your sub? Can we talk to them? And if we start zeroing in on a certain builder, I think we wanna spend time. We don't have to go through every single trade, but certainly the mechanical guy, the electrical guy, we'd wanna talk to.
Well, I mean,
plumbing, yeah,
I think
not so
that's one
much
of the
the,
things I liked about Bill, is that he's really willing and suggested, you know, ways that we could cut back, and is willing to work with them. A lot of, you know, the first guy, Ken, didn't really mention that very much.
so initial impressions, I'm not trying to force a decision, but
Bill,
Don?
Well, I'm happy with either one, I really am. I think they can both do the job. I guess one of the things that I really heard from Bill was the cost factor on him compared to what we've got here. Seems to me like he certainly is the best buy on the table. I mean, that's just my first swag at it, though. I mean, when he talks about how much he's giving up just to start the thing, and to sit there and come right out and say, well, probably not higher than 12,000, I mean, to me, that just kinda like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be about 4%, and that's what he's
that's
written
what
in
he
here.
said.
yeah,
you know, and I look at that, you know, geez,
Yeah,
12,000 for that big a job, to me, seems like a pretty good buy, but
yeah,
and I think in the numbers way back when, and the set-asides, I think I had it like 15 to 20 for architecture and engineering. Bill?
I like Ken better. I don't know that I believe either one of their numbers entirely. My notes from Ken's first, the same thing, willing to discuss fees with us, and that's why we like both of them. Not charge rate, but the services, in other words, if I remember right, and I think Bill did that the first one too, they both talked about how it wasn't so much, you can't just always look at rate, which I think was one reason Bill wasn't opposed to saying what his was. Because they say to look at services, what do you want us to do? What do you need us to do? If you want us to communicate with the congregation more, we're gonna charge you more. If you want us to fill out all kinds of papers,
Yeah,
you don't, neither one of us is going to us for free. I just feel more comfortable with Ken, I think, that's all. But I would go, if the committee goes with Bill, that's fine, because I think he can do the job.
Tony?
The other thing I liked about Ken was that he actually did go and talk to the city
yeah.
before.
I was gonna mention that, but he's already done some.
Bill could have done that. He did look up the code, as he said, on the wall, which they'll all have to do, and the city will be happy to point that out when we get to the application for setbacks in the walls and all that kind of stuff. So, I think, I like that initiative. He took it all on his own. That was time he spent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it important? Yeah, I don't know. It's just
Right.
an indicator. They both sound like they're hungry for work. They're both,
Oh, I didn't think he did, the last guy.
Yeah.
I thought the first guy seemed a little
More hungry.
more hungry.
if you say you can start next week,
Yeah, but it may be
That means
because
you
there
got
are
a
three of
lot.
them.
Well, here's the-
It's, to me, it
here's the-
sounded like he's
here's the-
professional.
yeah. I
Ken,
think so,
Ken
too.
he's a one-man band.
Yeah,
His wife helps him out in the office, but this guy, Bill, is a three-man firm. He's got a partner, and then they've got another guy that's just a notch below a partner, and then they've got folks in the office.
Yopa's one guy that's been in front of looking at that for 30 years, doesn't have a heart attack. He's the one he was talking about that does all the, in other words, where the rubber really meets when someone produces the paper. What was it? He had, the guy who graduated in 74, he's my age, jeez.
Old critter.
Yeah, Phil Green or something, yeah. Yeah, Phil
well,
Green.
I guess what I think is, they both seem capable of doing it, but I'm hearing no more than 12,000 versus, these say estimated. I'm sure he's lowballing on the estimated, so we're starting out at 16,800 versus no more than 12,000. And
Do you believe that no more than 12,000?
Well,
Isn't
if you're
him
gonna
saying that
believe
to us
either one,
almost as
though.
good as a
I mean,
I think
a
so.
verbal commitment?
'Cause I
he's
tried to-
got, well, he's got right here, no more than, and this guy is like estimated, so you can't, he's not
That's
even
why I tried to pin him.
inferring that it's.
I tried to pin him on that, and when I finally said 12, he said that'd be on the high
That'd be
side.
on the high
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
say that.
Now, the other thing, so I'm sensing you're leaning a little toward Bill.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't technically get a vote on this, cause I am not a
That's all right, we
member
like
of the building
opinions.
committee.
We like
I can,
opinions.
you all can take my opinion, but
And your
I leave
opinion
it to
is?
you all. My opinion is Bill, and the reason is one, I don't think he's desperate for work. I think if we told him no, he'd go on to his next thing. I think Ken, though, would feel a little let down, and not that that's bad, I'm not saying that, but, I think the fact, I don't know whether he's like a used car salesman who says, I'm trying to help churches out, or whether he's really honest about that with the
You're talking
nonprofit
about
thing.
Bill. That he's kinda gonna give away 4,000 up front.
But he said 12,000 would be on the high end, and I'm really concerned about how much higher this number's gonna go with Ken. If we start out on our first expenditure, and we've said $15,000 to $20,000 for architectural fees, and we come back and say, well, we spent 22,500, that's gonna, you
Not
know,
bode well.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I will tell you,
So
my-
I wouldn't just vote purely on cost unless I felt like they were both qualified to do it. And because they're both qualified to do it, and this is our big first step, I'm going with cost on this one, so.
I'll be honest, because I saw them both and I've seen their proposals. Coming in, I was leaning a little toward Ken, but I think I'm leaning a little toward Bill now. A couple of things he said, when he talked about working with builders and subcontractors, resonated with me. Here's another thing, that Bill said all their drawings are produced with CAD and PDF,
Yeah,
so we can email this stuff all around. If Dale's not here or Don's not here and we got drawings and we need decisions to say, hey, is this,
Yeah.
are we cool with this kitchen? Email them around, where I think Ken is a pencil guy, if I remember right.
No, the only one I heard is
No.
Pencil was the first guy.
Yeah.
Is
They
Ken
yeah.
is CAD
He's
also?
CAD too.
Okay,
Now,
The
he
only
have
guy I
to
heard
do
was
it
the Pencil
himself.
guy was that first draftsman that we talked to.
okay.
He says his rate was average 80 an hour, higher when just him. So he has other people. Ken, I don't know if he said who, he didn't.
It's
His
just his
CAD-driven office, ballpark 4.5% to 7% of total for total architect, which would be in line with what he
Okay,
was talking about. Good idea, they both said a good idea to involve the builders, and early, as a matter of fact, we were getting hints from them on
Yeah.
doing that.
that's
So,
right.
I mean,
I think all
I
of them
learned a
pretty
lot
much
from
said that.
interviewing all these people.
Yeah. Yeah, they all said that, and I think that's right, to get them involved early. Yeah. Well,
Ultimately, that's my question, though, is, when he tells us that 12,000 would be on the high end, do we get to hold him to that?
help me
well,
with this,
it'd have
because,
to be in the contract.
Yeah.
yeah, here's the thing
Yeah.
that I'm thinking might be, if this makes sense to y'all, that we all had enough questions about this or that or the other thing. Can we ask them, I mean, we got this whole proposal with a lot of detail in it, but what we're kind of missing, I sense, is tell me not, I don't want 2 pages of detail, but tell me the services you're gonna provide, how long it's gonna take, and how much is it gonna cost. I'm feeling that I wanna go back to both of them and ask for that.
But how can they
I
answer
think
that without knowing
these
more
are it,
detail?
I
mean,
think this is it.
I think Ken tried to do that,
Yeah,
But
and,
that's too much detail. But
well, no,
if-
it's an estimate. I
Well,
mean,
why don't you just get a written thing from Bill saying, hey, you said at the meeting that 12,000 would be on the high end, can you give us some kind of guarantee that that's not just talk, but that's actual,
Well, I think what he's gonna say, it's gonna depend
It
on
is.
what services we ask them to provide. So that's what I'm getting at, that without. a
well, what I'm
whole-
saying is, I think we have that from
Ken,
Ken, but we don't
Yeah.
have that
Well-
from Bill.
Well,
From
actually,
Bill.
we do, because he said 4%, and that's it. He said 4% for this scenario. And, you know, that's 12,000. It's about 12,000.
Here's what I think they're gonna provide,
Well,
is that they're gonna provide these initial schematics, which is gonna take what we've got and make it more real, so we can go to the city. That's kind of the first part. The second part is what's classically called design development, where they show us various layouts of the kitchen. And the starting point is what Dale and Joan and Marlene have done. Give them that and then say, okay, what's the kitchen gonna look like? So you gotta do that for the whole thing. Where are the bathrooms gonna be located upstairs? And where's the sink and the toilet, all that, that's design development. And being our partners, we go through the city. And once we know we've got the green light with the city, and we've seen some different layouts, that's design development. Once we're all kind of blessing that, then he produces construction documents. And how long is that gonna take, and how much is that gonna cost? Is that being too simple?
yeah, I think we should be able to make a decision when we have, personally. I think, well, we look like I mean, what's he gonna tell you? For instance, on Ken's, to me, what he's doing, he's got 24 hours, prepare application materials for CUP and variance requests. He's filling out the forms. We don't do we do very little is the way I look at it. Us, you, me, Don, building committee, except approve it. I'm not sure when Bill said something about, well, we can provide the diagrams or something for the variance. Schematics. He didn't say he's gonna fill out the
The paperwork.
paperwork. And I did that for a county one 8 years ago for the boat school. And let me tell you, that was a lot of work. And it was a lot of hours. 24 hours, cause I mean, if you look at his preliminary design, 24 hours, that might be a little high, but Ken's I'm looking at 24 hours here. That's gotta be just filling out the paperwork, and the city, I'm sure has a lot. I mean, they ask all kinds of stuff. They ask for the boat school, because we're on the water, we wouldn't have them here, but, you know, eelgrass issues, what was your soil, how was it rated? I mean, I had to go look up all this stuff. It took a lot of work. And I'm sure that's what this 24 probably hours is. I'm not sure I heard the same thing. I should ask the question from Bill on that.
Well,
But he would do it. We may have to,
Yeah.
So you think he's bare bones with 12,000, as opposed to Ken, who's doing some of this stuff that's kind of really difficult for us to do, but Bill would be leaving us doing some of it.
I think so. But no, or we ask him to do it, and then he may say, well,
That's more money.
yeah, I mean, $1,500, he already said he's giving us 4,000 off.
Yeah,
Now, if you compare that through step 7, who's got a calculator?
we would work hourly through
You
the
got a calculator?
schematic phase.
Yeah,
Oh, I do. I
well,
have my
Ken's
phone.
schematic
Should
phase
be-
is,
That's number 7.
yeah, can anybody add that up quickly? 640, 640, 19, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers. 0,
8,
10, 14, 16,
About
18,
850.
22.
8,050.
Give me your numbers.
640,
640.
Twice.
yeah, twice.
Twice,
1920,
hang on. And then 1920,
320,
just a second. Then 320,
then 640,
640,
then 1920,
1920 again,
then 1280.
1280, 7360.
Okay. So if we compare that to he said he's gonna, that's 5,500 if you remember he said, I'm gonna give you $4,000 basically, onto the 1,500, 55 versus 73, and then you gotta,
Is Ken's, what's
Then are we
Ken's
comparing?
hourly rate?
well, I'm trying to think, you know, he's estimating 24 hours here, he's estimating 8.
Well, so the question would be then,
$80
We're not
an hour.
necessarily comparing apples to apples.
Well, he's
that's
got
why I'm
his
asking, should
hourly
we
rate
just
here.
send
He's got his
number,
hourly rate here.
should we just send numbers
Oh,
one
80,
through
yes, $80
12?
rate.
And say which of these will be included in the no more than 12,000 figure you sent to us?
Well,
that's,
that
the items
part,
1 through 12 are Ken's.
Right, I'm
That's
saying, should we
fair.
send 1 through 12 to Bill and say which of these would not be included in the no more than, or $12,000 being a high number?
Well, this gets you through the first initial run, the conditional use and the variance. We just don't know how much work we're doing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we say, which of these will you not be doing based upon the $12,000 figure you sent to us? I mean, I think that's what I'd like to know is,
that's what I was getting at earlier, is to somehow try to get it a little more apples to apples.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
comparison.
Somehow
Well-
we need to know what, we see here what Ken's doing. What if this here is gonna be the same thing that Bill
Yeah.
is doing with the $12,000 price he gave?
Well, here you see that he's charging $80 an hour, he's charging 95 an hour. Bill is 95 and Ken is 80. So the difference could be either the price or the amount of time that Ken is assuming that it's gonna take him to do it.
So Bill is either missing some of these numbers, or it doesn't take him as long, or he's not as
Exactly.
estimating as high as Ken.
Or he's
So
willing,
that's what I'd like
or
to
he's
know.
willing to eat more up front.
Let me take
Yeah.
a whack at this, what I think I wanna request of these guys. Let me write it up and I'll shoot it around to you guys and see if you think it's a fair attempt at getting a little better apples to apples.
Yeah, cause now that you've mentioned all that, I don't know who I would choose.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think you can make it based, I think they're in the ballpark. I don't think it's a
both of-
matter,
either one.
I don't think
would
it's a
be
matter of money
fine.
at this stage. I think Bill has already said he's gonna donate, basically. Ken hasn't said that. And I don't, let me look
But do you
back at my
believe Bill?
notes. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, do you-
I mean, I
this
think
isn't-
he's gonna do that.
This isn't like a used car salesman
No.
guy, this is
When he says he thinks it's gonna be 4%, I do that. When he says he thinks it's gonna be 12,000, then I don't believe that, because he doesn't know exactly what we're going to. He thinks we'll be roughly in 4% of our bricks and mortar. But we could make it 6% by asking him to do more, and he's gonna do it if we want him to do it. The discipline is gonna be us not wanting,
Yeah.
letting him.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
yeah.
gonna be easy to have him go do it, because we don't have to look for a different place to get it done. 'Cause
If,
I'd much rather pay
somebody.
the full service
I
and have
guess
it
I'm the
done.
only guy with a calculator.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying, if 1 through 12 is included in Bill's,
Then it's a
then it's,
no-brainer.
yeah.
Here's
I know.
three, I asked Richard Berg a long time ago what he would do.
If we know what the definition of these things are.
He said 7%. And I'm
You
just
know, I
gonna
mean,
use
if
round
these are
figures.
accepted,
At 300,000
accepted skills or.
total
Well-
budget.
Or if they don't
Richard Berg would
translate.
be
Pieces that,
21,000.
that have a definitive.
If you go back to our original interview, Bill said usually around 8% of bricks and mortar. Ken said usually, because we asked him, each person that, 4.5% to 7%. So they're both, I mean, Ken actually had a broader, lower. Bill's rate was 80 to 95 an hour, and it depends on, his people working for him don't get as much as he does. So it depends, that higher number, depends more on who's. doing
Bill
it.
said usually around 8%,
Mhm.
And 8%,
But
He
bricks and
said
mortar, but
9% here.
Yeah,
that's for full service.
Yeah,
that's
for
not
full
what he, yeah,
service.
that's full service.
And we were just, or Dave was asking to pull out numbers, some of them, I mean, I did copy that down each time, because, where's my others?
From,
And they were all.
let's get off the money
Yes, let's do it.
aspect for a minute. That's important, but it's not the whole ballgame.
Yeah.
Let's just,
Right.
personality wise, working with the committee.
I can't tell in just one meeting.
I can't either.
So that's kind of a
I
toss-up.
keep coming to the person that I liked the best was Ken, and don't ask me why. I liked his enthusiasm, especially what he did on the proposal, because we didn't ask him to go talk to the city.
That's right.
So he bugged them. Bill would be doing that, getting him the job. He'd be doing the same thing, and I think he would do just as good a job as Ken.
Well, could it be
So-
that Bill already kind of knew those things because he's more experienced?
No, I don't, the way he's talking and the way the regulations change, and actually the people that interpret, and there's not too many people that interpret them. Michael Hoskins now interprets a lot of the building stuff.
Yeah, these guys
Yeah.
change fairly
Yeah, they
regularly.
do, and they have different emphasis in what the flavor of the month is on
When I
pushing,
did
I
the
think.
original cam 3 years ago, it wasn't Michael Hoskin, it was Fred somebody
Yeah,
had that job.
Some can be more laid back, let things, they have a lot of latitude.
So
Can the I mean, how much of a problem is it when you get turned down, you have to go back again
What do you
For
mean, go
what?
back and
by the
forth?
city? When you get turned down by the city or whatever, and you have to go back
It's-
again.
It's almost impossible the second go around.
Okay,
You
so,
wanna do it
so that's
right up
my question is, does Bill carry more weight, being here working here since,
For a long time.
you know, I mean, is he a guy that that they would know, and is that
You
gonna
know,
make any difference, and other than,
you know
The
what
odds
I,
are that he's done projects in the city of Port Townsend,
Yeah.
but it's been a while since he did it.
People
And so you
change,
got
and
different
it's-
players at the city. He's done a lot of work in Jefferson County, but when you pull permits for Collar Point, that's the county, not the city.
it's, what I found in my experience in real estate is that if you go to the city and say, here's what I wanna do, help me figure out how to do it, they will. I mean, it's a lot, most of it is the attitude that you go in with. You know,
That's right.
if you say, I'm willing to work with you, and this is the ultimate goal, they will bend over backwards to help you because they don't wanna argue and they don't wanna hassle either.
That's right.
It's someone who comes in and says, by golly, I want this and this is what I'm gonna have and you're working for me, and that you get, problems.
I'll take a whack at trying to get apples to apples from these guys to help us make a final decision. We don't have to decide tonight. But I'll
Well,
put-
I don't mind us deciding. I don't know that
Well,
asking them for more details
We got
is-
2 other people who are gonna listen
Yeah.
to the tapes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
That's right. And I'm not gonna ask for more detail, Bill, but to try to see if we can get a little closer on apples to apples.
And I have no trouble with going with Bill.
And I
That's
don't
a
have
good
any trouble going
besides.
with either one.
Yeah,
of
so
them.
I
Like I
think-
say, I think they would both do us a good job.
I'm kinda right, it's a toss-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the
So-
preliminary work the kid did though. To
Yeah,
me, it
I
was
do
very
too.
impressive to go talk to the city, to Google the maps and do
And the
the
other
stuff
thing,
that he did to show that he's got a real interest in the thing.
and
so.
you talked to your pastor that was involved with Ken on 2 other projects.
And
That's-
like,
Yeah, that's
Oh, and he
another thing.
liked
counts
him?
for a lot.
he liked him a
We
lot.
ought to check references.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
On
talked to
Bill.
Roger because
Yeah, we
when he
should.
first, after
Yeah.
we first talked to him, I called Roger up and I talked to him and I said,
Yeah.
hey,
that's-
you were the pastor over here in Swim, and then said he was also at Deer Valley or
A Bear Creek.
Bear Creek, and he says, yeah,
He hired him again.
he says, yeah, I like
Yeah,
him a
that's
lot.
big
He
Oh,
says-
well, I
that's
didn't
a
know
big
that.
And then he
statement.
I would
said-
definitely go with
That's
Ken
a
then.
big-
And then he says, oh, well, you need to talk to so-and-so, he was the guy that was the chairman of the committee, but, we liked him, so, that to
That
me.
says a lot, that says a lot.
I mean, that kinda makes up my mind, and
Two,